Howdy, y'all, and welcome to Hot and Humid East Texas for video number 19, all about free will. Well, the meek perspective on free will. I have spent quite a bit of time watching some videos on free will, lots of folks talking about it, most of them hedging their bets against free will being a thing. And you'll find a lot of these folks are the ones who believe God doesn't exist as well. Seems to be the two go hand in hand. Perhaps your faith in God is why you have free will, and perhaps the fact that you don't believe in God, that you don't believe in free will. And that's because one of the fundamental arguments stems from the physics world. Physics believes that everything has a predetermined outcome, cause and effect kind of thing. And this is a philosophical school called determinism. Won't get much into it, but these folks do believe that every single thing is already determined. Now, there is a sort of a group of people that, what they call them, compatibilists or something, and they believe that free will and determinism can both exist at the same time. I encourage everyone to go out there and watch videos on these subjects. It's pretty fascinating. And then there's some other folks that are attacking free will from the biological side, using our biology against us, my friends. Using things like your hormones and your emotions, your genetics, any physical injuries or illnesses that you could have had, any trauma that you experienced, the culture in which you were raised. So I assume that's sociology, using sociology against you as well. Your family, that sort of thing, and their beliefs and what they raised you to believe in, your school system, all that sort of thing, and how this takes away your ability to have free will, because they will, how you feel and your desires and this sort of thing, and how you've been sort of socialized to behave will override any true free will that you have, and that you will, again, just be reacting to cause and effect, just like the physics folks believe. And then some other folks that, the first video I saw actually that started this whole idea was there's a group of scientists that were looking at, I can't remember exactly what they're doing, but they're recording like brain waves and whatnot and having people move their hand for some reason. And it turned out that people were reacting before they actually thought about it. And they come to the conclusion that your body will react without any input from your mind. And I'm like, okay. Jordan Peterson discussed something along these lines as well. He's talking about like quadriplegics, that like if you suspend them over a treadmill, their body will walk on its own. Just that their brain no longer has the connection to tell the body to walk on its own. Which kind of leans towards the free will thing, but if someone throws something at you and says, think fast, your body's going to naturally react. And I've always kind of assumed that's, a predator thing. It's like if a snake jumps out at you, you're going to jump back before you even have time to think about it. It's probably a good thing that you don't have complete free will over your body's reaction within this space. So I was kind of like, well, duh. Of course your body is going to react without your input sometimes. I mean, heart beating and breathing and all sorts of things. And there are some logical arguments out there as well that have been around for a very, very long time. So again, I encourage everyone to go out there and actually kind of watch some folks talking about this. It's a fascinating conversation. I just wanted to put out the meek perspective on free will. So again, like I said, determinism and cause and effect, and even the genetics and the hormones and that sort of stuff, and your body moving on its own. All this is stemming from the scientific perspective and their belief that we live within an organically generated world, that the laws of nature, just through happenstance and random occurrences, became what it is now. Even though if you find an honest mathematician out there, they'll tell you, there's no way there's been enough time for life to have evolved to the state that it is in now in 15 billion years. There's just no way through, which is funny because like evolution will sit there and say, or the theory of evolution believes that like we change through a series of random occurrences in our genetics. And some were successful and some were not. And this led to who we are and the laws of nature and this sort of thing. And then you'll listen to like the physicists will tell you that no, everything's determined. There is no such thing as random. So how we end up with random mutations and nothing being random is they probably have different meanings for the word random. It's probably what it is. But the meek perspective, sort of getting at it there. The key issue is that we believe that we live within a created space, and this is not a natural space. So the fact that our body reacts to this space is, well, my answer is duh. Of course it does. Our mind and our body are part of this created space. You can think of it as the Matrix or something like Avatar, or you can think of it as the simulacrum. I call it the creation. Whatever you want to think of it as. We are tapped into a being, a body, and a mind for the experience of what this place is. We live within the divine mirror, an image of a real space. There's real space, and then we're isolated from this real space so that we may have our experience here. We are not our mind and our body. So for free will, it comes down to kind of two key aspects. And the first and probably most important is, can you see who you are and where you are? Can you see through the illusion that's around you? See, people say like Satan is the master of illusion. That's because the lie is real in this space. And it's up to each being to be able to recognize and see the lie and understand who they are and where they are. Which brings us to the second part. And that is, we are a co-creator of this space. We create the world in which we experience. This world is aware of our presence and reacts to our presence. You know, the old philosophical thing, if a tree fell in the woods and no one was there to hear it, didn't make a sound. Not only am I going to say it didn't make a sound, but the tree didn't fall. None of that happened. If there is no consciousness to experience the event, it didn't happen. When you walk upon a tree lying in the woods, it's a stage. It's an illusion to lay out the grounds for a play for you to experience. That tree never fell. That tree never stood. This is the meek perspective. And our free will is our ability to see that all the world is truly indeed a stage, and that we are co-creators writing the script of this play. And that's the reason why free will and having our legal system and all that sort of stuff, respecting each individual sovereign human being's ability to think and create for themselves, because that is the space that we live within. Now, there are other co-creators out there with us. And these are what I call the lesser gods. You can call them angels and demons, or as the scientists would call them, they are your emotions. These things can possess you, and they create the world. They co-create the world. So take times like now. The thoughts of war are possessing people. And if it possesses enough people, then we will be in a world at war. War is an entity, it's an intelligence that can possess you and can possess and take over the creative capacity of this world, just like love or hate or envy. Or in the 80s, it was greed. In the 70s, it was a weird mix of party and a serial killer. Everyone thinks it was the lead that was in the air. Probably had an effect on people's bodies, eh? Getting sidetracked. So, free will. Can you see where you are? Can you understand who you are and your co-creative capacity in this space. These are the most important aspects of free will. The rest of it is, well, give an example. Take like the city of Seattle. Science, the physics and the chemists and the, biologists and all, and sociologists can tell you geographically where it is. They can tell you about the topography and the rainfall and precipitation and weather and, the demographic makeup and the economical makeup and, all these sorts of things. But they can't tell you anything about what it's like to actually live in Seattle. You ask one person, you will get one story on what it's like to live in Seattle. You ask 10 people, you get 10 different opinions on what it's like to live in Seattle. You all ask 500,000 people that live there, and you will get 500,000 different stories. That's because the space we live within is about the experience. It is about the stage. It is about the co-creation of the story that we write and experience. And that is the key part of what free will is. I'm going to add one other thing here at the end. And that's to refer back to a video I made not too long ago about the Beatitudes. And this has to do with how do we deal with these other entities, the government, the media, your neighbors, even big business or small business. You see, people use advertising and marketing and all sorts of things because they're attempting to create the world that benefits them. Not all uses of this co-creation ability are evil. You can try and attempt to make a beautiful world. You can attempt to lead the world into war. You can attempt to lead the world to all want to drive a Ford. But the Beatitudes is a great lesson on how to find your true nature so that you can see who you are as a being and create the world that you actually want to experience, that create the world that you want your children to have. So when most people read it, they'll see like, the poor in spirit are blessed because, and they'll reach the kingdom of heaven or whatever. And then blessed are those that mourn because they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek for they shall inherit the earth. So most people read it like, this group of people will receive this blessing, and this group of people will receive another blessing. But I read it as a prescription for living in this world to really truly believe who you are so that you may have free will in this world. Or as Jesus says, so that you can become the light on the hill and the salt of the earth. How you can have tremendous value, what your value truly is. So I'll just briefly go over it. To be poor in spirit means to be poor means to not have. So what does it mean to not have spirit? Well, look at if you saw two people having an argument or a great debate, you'd say that's a spirited conversation. Or I remember like when you're in high school, you have the spirit squad and, you have all the cheerleaders trying to, bring out the spirit or whatever. Same thing in churches. People feel in the spirit, they'll start acting out, losing control to a different entity. So to be poor in spirit is to not have this. It's to be in control of your emotions, not in control, but no longer allow them to have any effect upon you. That is what it means to be poor in spirit. This is how you reach the kingdom of heaven. This is how you become the co-creator, is by gaining control over those things that, like the biologists point out, your genetics and all these things have massive impact on you in this created space. And the recognition of this created space and learning how to subdue these things to the point where you no longer have them anymore is critically important to move to the next level. And then, of course, you're going to mourn the loss of these things. That's number 2, because you'll become a completely different person. There'll be aspects of your life now that you're going to have to get rid of, and you're going to have to mourn the loss of these things. You're going to have to examine them, say goodbye to them, to move on to the next phase of your life. And then you become meek, which is to become a person who understands their base nature and lives naturally. You see, the word meek comes from war horse. And a war horse for the Greeks was a wild stallion that would only allow one person to ride it, meaning that you need to become powerful, natural, not domesticated, but still hear the one true voice and know who you are and where you are. And then that war horse could go into battle, can go into hell itself, and still hear the one true voice. That's what it means to become meek. So you lose your emotion, you mourn the loss of who you were, and then you become the powerful being. Then you go out and you seek justice and mercy and all the other beatitudes that follow. This is a prescription for becoming a co-creator, a true co-creator, a true light on the hill, the true salt of the earth. This is free will. It's a choice, and it's a path, because all these people laying out the arguments against free will are correct. The laws of biology and physics and sociology are against you having free will. It is something you must choose. It's a path you must follow, and it is narrow, my friends, and it's hard to find. I think I'm going to leave it there. And my glasses are always falling down. With that, my friends, I will see you on the next one.